Okay, call this Newburgh Public Schools meeting of May 23rd, 2023 work session to order. Next thing up, flag salute with Director DeHart. Thank you, Director DeHart. Mr. Limber.
We're going to recess an executive session as per the records exempt from public inspection ORS 192.660, Section 2, Part F, to consider information or records that are exempt from public inspection, including letters from an attorney, student records, and personnel files. Let's go ahead and meet in an executive session.
Okay, we're back in the regular session. Newburgh School Board, May 23rd, 2023. This is a work session and reviewing the agenda. Tonight we have, we'll approve minutes from the last board meeting, consent agenda, new hires, the NHS trap shooting is going out of state. We have some policy correspondence. We will have some principal presentations from Mabel Rush. We'll have math curriculum and adoption work updates, some fees and policies for tech equipment, an update on the Parent Bill of Rights. And we also have the first student contract, National School Lunch Program, IGA City of Newburgh, superintendent comments, and then we'll read what happens at our next meeting. And so first thing up right now is the approval of the minutes. Last board meeting.
I move that the Newburgh School Board approve the minutes from the last school board meeting as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. 7-0, sorry. Long day. Before we get into our first thing on the consent agenda here, we got through there. I'd like to just say that, there's some things on there always when we have people coming and going, different staff members. We always want to say thank you to different people. A shout out to Emily Chadwick, principal at Antonio Crater. We just wish her well. And also there is, always good and tough times when people come and go. So we just like to thank all those people for what they do for our district. This time of year, everybody's tired, everybody's exhausted, and we just appreciate them a lot. Also on the consent agenda right now, I'll get a motion on that first. Where are we going here, brother?
I
The new
move
hires.
that the Newburgh School District Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, NHS trap shooting out of state travel. We did this last year, if you guys remember, right? So,
Mr. Chair, I believe that's part of the consent agenda, is it not?
oh, we got them all three at the same time? Oh, okay. Thanks, Brian. Last year, they made a big presentation, so they're good. Those guys they do really well. Before we go into reports and presentations, before you guys come up though, I just like to say, we've been through a tough political season in Newburgh. And so as board chair, I'd like to say congratulations to all of our new people who are going to be on the school board. And, change is always going to happen in schools. In my career, people come and go generally in coaching, teaching every 2 to 3 years. It seems like that the transition happens. It's been a pleasure to serve with Brian for 4 years, but, we have a new board coming in and the people of the city spoke. And so I said, instead of trying to be, anything other than just like, we just got to be here for the kids. And this new board, I think, will come in, do a great job. Directors DeHart and Powell will still be here. And so just congratulations to them and the people of Newburgh for getting out and vote. The voter turnout was pretty high for a school board election. And a lot of people worked really hard on both sides. And I think now my goal is going to do whatever I can to help support the district and the new board to do whatever they can do. And so hopefully we can start to, lower the temperature a little bit overall. And again, just congratulations to everybody that won their elections. So wanted to say that tonight before we move any farther, since we're not doing board comments tonight. So we're going to get into reports and presentations. And our first one up is a principal one from Mabel Rush, and that's Tim Lauer.
My name's Tim Lauer. I'm the principal at Maple Rush. This is my 4th year in Newburgh and 4th year at Maple Rush. And tonight I'm just going to share a little bit about our school and our staff and our community. And then I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. So Maple Rush has 403 students as of this afternoon. We have 58 staff members. We have roughly about 40% of our students qualify for free or reduced meals. And in our community, there are 7 languages that are spoken. And if you don't know the story of Maple Rush, she's a pretty fascinating woman. She worked in this district for over 50 years. She was pioneer in a lot of ways. And I think one of the first things I did when I came to Newburgh is I went down to the library and pulled out the graphic and read about the dedication of the school. And it's a great story. So at some point you might want to take a look at that. One of the things I wanted to really start off tonight is our parent community at Maple Rush. They support us in lots of different ways. They support us in the classroom. They support us with our Lion Walk, which is our big fundraiser for the year. We have an auction. They organize things like Battle of the Books. They also do, like I said, a lot of volunteering in the building, in the classroom. And we greatly appreciate that whole community effort that they put into that. Also, I want to mention a little bit about our staff. We have it's an interesting mix of people. We have people who went to school there and never left and are teaching there still. They came back and started their careers there. We have some new folks who are just starting in their first year of their career. And it's, like I said, I'm very proud of my staff. I think I've never worked with a staff that I think that's worked harder or longer. You will go by and see cars there on weekends. It's really dedicated staff. We have what I consider, the building itself is a very interesting building in terms of its design and such. And our library is a wonderful space. Summer Niece is our librarian, and she helps make that space really shine. Really encouraging students to read and also to develop a love of reading. Our counselors, we have 1.5 FTE for our counseling, and Tina and Jennifer do an outstanding job of supporting our students and making them feel welcomed and feel a part of our building. Again, our staff, this was a recent book character day, and a lot of them took part and got into it really well. One other person I wanted to shout out to was Mrs. McKinnon, our music teacher, who's been there many, many years. She is someone who just is kind of like the linchpin of the building. This year we were able to offer our families 3 evening performances, and the kids did a great job with their music programs. And again, Aletha is really a marvel. We also, this year, for the last 2 years, we've been using the co-teaching model with English language development. And we've been fortunate to have 9 of our classrooms take part in this. So our ELD, our English language development teachers actually push in during the day in a co-teaching model. And this has enabled us, for example, in kindergarten, to actually have 2 classrooms take part in this model. It's really increased our opportunity to provide reading interventions to students. And it's also one of the things we worked on this year too is a collaboration between our reading specialist, Jessica Hubbard, our ELD staff, and our special ed staff to really find time to collaborate and connect and to plan for interventions that are planful and purposeful with students. And looking at our beginning of the year Dibbles reading assessment data with our kindergarten students and the growth they made to the middle of the year. And we've started that process of assessing them for the end of year, and we're seeing significant gains. And a big reason for that, I think, is the coordination and commitment of these people, and also the collaboration time. An area that we would like to continue to grow in and develop in is in mathematics instruction and also in our STEM work. This summer, with the bond, we'll be receiving a Makerspace Classroom in addition to a number of other repairs and enhancements to the building. And Also, I wanted to point out the Austin Family Foundation and the support that they provided to the district this year and to our schools in terms of robotics and technology and math instruction, and that's been tremendously helpful. One area that we would like to continue to work and develop are math interventions. I think we've done a good job with reading interventions, but in math, that's a little bit trickier in terms of we don't have dedicated staff. So we've been looking at some additional resources. We have a partnership with George Fox. We have some work study students that come in. We also have with the Newburgh High School, we have 2 students that actually come in and do that work study program, and they've been able to help us provide some additional support in that area too. Finally, just want to mention a couple other projects in the building. We have a K-Kids Club that's sponsored by the Kiwanis Club, and those are students in grades 3, 4, 5. And Summer Neese, our librarian, supports those students. They do various service projects around the building. And currently they have they're collecting supplies for the Newburgh Animal Shelter. And then we also have a Student of the Week program where we ask teachers to highlight students. They provide me with information specifically about that student. We then craft a letter that goes home to the family, kind of bragging about the student. And they're also awarded a book to take with them as part of being acknowledged for Student of the Week. And finally, again, just wanted to close out and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this evening, and be willing to answer any questions you might have.
Board, any questions for Tim?
Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks. I went to Maple Rush, and I can remember when we had a lunar eclipse, a solar eclipse.
Sure.
When I was going there, and us making the little kind of S-shaped devices.
Right,
to
so
be
you
able
can-
to look at.
right.
So, yeah, it's a great school. I enjoyed my time there.
No, I've
No.
no,
Thanks for
it's,
your leadership.
thank you. Appreciate that. No, it's a great staff and a great community.
Well, Tim, a couple of years before your time, I went to Central grade school. And back then, before Park and Rec, we would play football, basketball, softball, track. And when we traveled to Maple Rush, it was a long road trip. It was about 8 minutes. And we got in your gym and we were just all, that is such a cool gym. I mean, back when we were kids,
Yeah.
and it was super fun, back then. So
Yeah, the gyms really, they have these translucent colored blocks in the wall. And so even if you go and, during the lights are off in the daylight, the sun coming in, it's really beautiful. It will seismic upgrades this summer too. So that's good.
well, thanks for what you do. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
I guess one other story I'll have to tell about it, probably before your time, but out on the playground, they had a tire wall. And it seemed like it was 100 feet high. There were other kids that managed to climb over the top. It was made out of logs, actual logs, and then tires strung together, and you climb up. But some kids were brave enough to climb over the top and go to the other side. And then they had a witch's hat too. Probably don't have that anymore. That's litigation involved in that. But my brother, I would get on one side of it. And my brother, who's 3 years older, would push me up. So now you're sitting about 8 feet up, and he'd hold on to the pole and then just start going around in that vertical course. It was always a challenge if he could get me to fly off again into the north. So
We'd have to order more accident report forms if we had that, I think, but great.
Thank you, Tim.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Next up, we have math curriculum and adoption work update from Jillian and Holly. And I don't see Brittany, but maybe she's here. No? Okay, you guys are up and on. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys. We have for the past 4 months, basically since February, we've begun working with our math leadership team, which is comprised of teacher leaders in all of our buildings at all grade levels. And we've been focusing on best practices in math instruction, led by our awesome TOSA, Dawn Reed. We've been working together to just coalesce, what does this look like district-wide, and for horizontal and vertical alignment, what are those best practices we want in place? We're using that as the lens to focus, looking at new curriculum next year. So we're here to announce that we're doing a math curriculum adoption, and for that process, here's Jillian.
So in terms of our process for the curriculum adoption, next year, we will start the formal piloting process. So at the start of the year, we will be doing curriculum reviews with the various publishers, selecting 2 or 3 curriculums to move forward and actually pilot. And that pilot process, we plan to utilize all of the materials that we would purchase. Sometimes pilots are digital only and you don't get the hard copy materials. And so we are intending to make sure every material that will be used in the classroom is part of the pilot process. And so it wouldn't be a digital pilot only, unless, of course, the will of the teachers would like it to be digital. But I think we are looking at some manipulatives and hard copy materials. And then after that pilot process, we will be coming to the board to make a recommendation in terms of which curriculum we would like to move forward with and seek your approval. So that timeline really looks like teachers making pilot decisions in early to mid fall, having that pilot start around the beginning of second trimester, and then wrapping it up and bringing an approval to the board sometime late winter, early spring. And then our hope would be that our materials are in hand for the start of the year. So we've got that decision timeline intentional so that we can continue to do the professional development for the rest of our staff in that new curriculum. And then expanding the leadership team so that they become our teacher leaders out in the buildings to support that professional development. It's a similar model that we utilize for the English language arts adoption. And one thing I failed to mention is, of course, our curriculum process will include community review time as well. So it follows the regular curriculum adoption timeline.
I have a question. Is it possible for the community involvement to be a little earlier in the process, for example, during the piloting session?
Yes. So once a decision is made regarding which 2 curriculums are piloting that are going to be utilized in the classroom, those materials will be available for community review.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions? Any other?
I'm trying to think of what do we not cover. When we do have the public review open, both the hard copy materials as well as the digital portal will be available to the whole community, just like we did for the world language adoption. So this will be a much larger window of time than we had for our world language adoption. But this is, again, a district-wide adoption rather than just one school with 3 or 4 teachers involved. So theoretically, that is a huge window to get the input that we would possibly need from our community.
And I asked this because for the English language arts curriculum, my understanding was that we had just a really short 1 week for folks to come in here to the district to look at the materials. And it was done like after we receive a recommendation from the teachers. So I think it would be great if we could just open up as soon as we have it, let everyone put their hands on it and be able to just look at what it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I have one for Molly. How many days till the French Open?
Oh, I'm boycotting the French Open because Rafa Nadal, who is my favorite tennis player, is injured and will not be playing. But it normally starts at the very beginning of June, July. No, that's Wimbledon. A very
5 days.
Yeah. at the end of
Rafa's
May.
hurt.
Again, Rafa is injured, which means I stopped following. But thank you for asking.
My niece and nephew went to his academy in Spain.
That is a family goal, so we might be fundraising.
I've got a pickleball court, but Molly has a tennis court at her house. So, yeah. Okay, that's enough. Thank you guys very much for what you're doing. That's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting for the kids and the teachers.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you. Next up is fees and policy for tech equipment with Scott Marlin.
Good evening.
An hour.
An hour. This is going to take like 10 minutes. All right.
got lots of questions.
All right. Good. Questions are awesome. So when I started in Newburgh back in November, one of the first conversations and meetings I had scheduled was with the librarians and admins at the schools, specifically regarding damages to Chromebooks. And specifically how the district is purchasing replacement parts and components, even if a student may be on their third, fourth, or fifth Chromebook. The district is paying from district funds to repair screens multiple times for the same students in some cases, or replace keyboards. And this is becoming a larger and larger expense to the district. So the goal was to identify a clear and concise policy with regards to if a student repeatedly damages devices, we need to have some options for our staff at the schools to either remove technology from that student's access or to potentially assess fees for repairs if they want to continue having access to technology. And we want to combine that with some of the ongoing stuff already at the schools, education about responsible use of technology, taking care of the technology that students use in the classroom and at home. So it's not just one specific thing, it's kind of a broad topic that we'd like to bring forward and address. And in our current student parent handbook, and I found this on the website, we already have a responsible use agreement that goes to families. There's a signature page that I don't think is included. Oh, it is. So we want to make sure that we are clear with the community. And so I kind of did a little bit of update to this compared to the original, just being clear on what repercussions or consequences students will face if we see repetitive damages. So that may be fines or fees to assess repairs, that may be loss of technology in general, and additional education and opportunity to develop their awareness of technology and district property. So what I put together really was just an update to an existing agreement that we already have. And we'd like to kind of take this forward and make it transparent to the community. So I'd like to include these updates in this agreement and post it on our website so that the community can see it at any time and work with the schools to ensure that we're getting this signed, that parents and students alike are aware of these fees that they may be assessed for repetitive damages.
So when you say repetitive, can you explain a little bit more about, because I can see a kid who, or a student who is using the Chromebook and it falls and it's the first time that it happens. And I can see that an accident of a one time versus this is the third time that this has happened in the last month. So can you explain to me how you're going to, because I'm reading here about the insurance policy and that's great, but how can we differentiate a one-time accident that happened to this student who's normally very careful but had an accident to this example that you're giving of multiple incidents with the same student?
Mm-hmm. So ultimately, I would kind of work that with the building admins, the staff, the teachers that know these students, because I certainly don't, not to this level. And usually a staff member or a teacher can tell pretty clearly if a student throws a Chromebook across the classroom versus, hey, I accidentally sat on my bag. So the staff that see these students on a day-to-day basis will have a much better idea, a much better feel for that than I would personally.
It was brought to our attention that there is at least one student at the high school level that's on their 8th Chromebook. And so it's an issue. We need a policy. We need to teach responsibility and to respect the school's property. You know, it's not a whole lot different than back in the day when we got textbooks. And if you lost your textbook or you ruined your textbook, there would be a fee assigned. So I think it's time to do this. I think it did get a little out of hand during COVID because there was federal money to replace the Chromebooks. There was federal money to buy them to begin with. They were being used a lot more at home, less supervision. So in a few cases, it got way out of hand.
So to understand clearly, these are going to be, that these fees are going to be applicable to everyone.
That is the intent, yes, with the
Okay.
understanding that sometimes accidents do happen.
Yeah, I just want to make sure because I can see a very unclear line of that example and an accident that prone. So I just want to make sure that either it's across the board, so everyone will be under the same rule. Or that it would be very difficult to assess and apply if there's not a rules. And I think I think it's correct to do that. But now what about a family that cannot afford this?
So fortunately, the district already has a framework in place for families with financial hardship, like the free and reduced lunch programs. Essentially, we kind of piggyback on that existing framework. So if a family is eligible for that program, they would see the same thing apply here with repair fees.
Thank you.
Scott, I have a question. So my time there, we had carts, that were, filled with Chromebooks coming out of the library. And, teachers would check them out. They would go into that classroom and it seemed to work really well. The Chromebooks didn't go home. They stayed there. They were checked out. I don't know if we still have those carts or not. I'm sure they're expensive. The Chromebooks would go in those things. They would take 25, 30 into a classroom. Is that on the possibility that something could happen like that?
Yes. In short, yes. The middle schools are already looking at pulling devices back to the classroom level. And instead of being one-to-one as we are now, at about the start of COVID, the middle schools went one-to-one. So every student has a Chromebook right now. They want to move that back to classroom sets like you're mentioning, and finding ways to keep them charged using carts or something similar so that they're available and ready to use in the classroom. There are a few concerns with that, however, that underprivileged students or families may not have the same access to technology at home. And with the increased online curriculum and learning, it may be more difficult to assign homework for students if they don't have technology at home. So while the middle schools are looking to pull devices back to the classroom, we're also trying to identify what's the best policy to have in place so that students that need them at home can have a checkout option so that they can take it home, do homework, have access to maybe even social media that their peers otherwise have, but this underprivileged family may not. So we're still having those conversations with the middle school admins specifically to identify these kind of pain points in pulling devices back and how we can best facilitate education in the classroom while still enabling the students to have access to content and curriculum at home as well.
I say that having access to, I have a 6th grader who does all of his homework that is, in his computer. And and he emails his teacher in the morning saying, so I'm not sure that I would want to see them pull back. I want to make sure that these students have access to technology so that they can do their work at home without any restriction. Day that you are sick, that you can still do your homework, that you can still, access all that technology. But again, I like to see the responsibility of care for that device maybe carry out through the entire, I don't want to say, I want to say even beyond the year, but maybe, middle school, you get, your computer in the beginning and you return it in the 8th grade, because that way you really take care of the device. I don't know if that is the case. I'll leave it up to you as technology maybe needs to be replaced. I don't know. But I do like the idea of each student having their own computer where they have all their materials, but also be held responsible for them, and also ensure that financial hardship would not be a bottleneck for access.
Well, I would say too, though, we do have data on what they're being used for. I mean, because we know in the last 12 years, screenology is a massive problem in the United States. And kids are, phones to computers. It's not an educational thing. It's a cultural thing. And we know the damage that is out there. The numbers are there. And as districts, we're buying into that, and helping that along. So I get it that they need it for the school. I understand that. But is there any data out there that's showing how much time they're spending watching a movie, playing a video game compared to working on math or writing an English assignment? Because again, the screenology is a real big time problem. It's nationwide right now. Everybody knows it's there. Nobody wants to talk about it. You can't go anywhere now where people, even our age, are addicted to their phones, So I guess my thing is like, we don't have $750,000 like we did during COVID money that the previous board spent on Chromebooks when we had other options available to us, and that money's dried up. So it's not going to be there to keep replacing these things over and over and over. And so we're going to have to come up with an alternative to just everybody having access to, because at some point this will go away, just like the COVID money will go away.
Dave, I have just one point of clarification. These Chromebooks, my understanding is that they are for Google Class, for the curriculum online. And you mentioned something about social media. I want to make sure that these devices, they are not for TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, or any of that, that these are used for school purposes. I know that my son's computer is for school only, and he has his iPad for his gaming, which is a different problem that he and every other kid spend too much time in. But that the resource for school, the Chromebook for the district, has boundaries where they can use it for only these things. Is that correct?
That kind of piggybacks the line-wise conversation, the content filter, where effectively we try to block certain adult content to start with. And then in addition to that, social media sites and some other things that could be questionable depending on the age of the students. And so these kind of go hand in hand. With regards to this policy, summer use, and especially when the concern that came up with the middle school admins was underprivileged students or underprivileged families, where the average student has access to social media on a personal device through summer so they can stay in contact with their peers. An underprivileged family may not have that same opportunity. How can we help bridge that gap? And so I'm not saying that we have a perfect answer, but there may be a way that we can facilitate that access for students who need it to stay in contact with their friends.
Okay. I mean, you're doing great. It's a tough question. This is a busy one. So, but we need to do a vote on, what we're hearing tonight. And Scott, you're doing a great job,
Thanks.
So it's just a tough subject. That stirs up. So he's asking for a vote. We need to get a vote on the agreement.
And
So-
specifically,
If-
what are the updates between our existing policy and what we're being asked to vote on?
So the primary differences, the primary updates that I've added to this is the specific details regarding the exact fees, as well as potential consequences, loss of technology for repeat offenders. And really just being clear on what the fees would be based on the cost to repair or replace a device. Because I feel like that language has never really been in this. And then we just want to be clear with that, so it's not a surprise to a family that they have to pay $55 for a broken screen.
So I'm gonna go back to that question. So the students, they keep their Chromebook through the summer?
In the past, due to COVID, the workload to bring those back and sanitize them and prepare them for redeployment was massive. So in the past, they have typically kept devices. And so it really is one-to-one where they have that device and they keep it through middle school. And that kind of like you were mentioning earlier, you want to build that personal accountability, the responsibility. The easiest way to do that was to have them assigned one device, and they're responsible for that for 3 years. So in the past, to my understanding, that is how they were deployed. Whether or not that continues is yet to be seen.
And is that written here, or is that a building decision?
I personally would prefer to leave that as a building decision because they know their staff and students best. I could come out and say, we're going to stay one-to-one because that's how the United States is moving. But that may not be the best fit for our schools. So I'd like to have the flexibility to work with the admins to determine what works best for their community at their school.
That's fair. Yeah, I'm just not sure. No matter where, I mean, I'll just not say it. I'm okay with that.
So in addition to what we discussed with regards to the fees and the potential consequences, there is language in here that could kind of give the district an opportunity to implement like an insurance policy program. I've seen this kind of scattered throughout Oregon. I wouldn't say there's any like state specific guidance on this, but I've seen this deployed in many districts really well. And I've seen it deployed in a couple of districts not quite so well. I think that we could implement a similar insurance policy where it would especially help cover that first incident of damage or the accidental damage, so that if a Chromebook is broken beyond repair, but it was an accident, that family wouldn't have to foot a $340 bill to replace it if we have an insurance program to work with those families. So I've added a little bit of language in here that gives us that option, but does not require it. So we can determine if that's a good fit for Newburgh or pass on that this year and reevaluate.
So according to this, the fee, the annual non-refundable fee of $20, and then any cost, any repair work with actual cost less than $50 will not be covered by this insurance. So if we're talking about a keyboard, it is $11 or each key or unit, the touchpad, trackpad, and charging cable and charging cable for iPad. So it basically would cover the screen of a Chromebook, the whole device of a Chromebook, a whole new iPad, or the.
Yes, so the insurance policy isn't designed for little nicks and scratches.
Right, it's for the
essentially.
entire device or the screen of the device.
Yes, it's to prevent that $300 surprise bill rather than, $11 or $12 to replace a key. It's a little bit more manageable on a budget than a surprise $300 or $400 bill. So the insurance policy is more designed for a full system replacement.
Got it.
Okay, board. I need a motion.
I'll move that the Newburgh School District Board of Directors approve the Newburgh Public Schools Technology Responsible Use Agreement.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Scott, thanks. Big job. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, I've got Dr. Phillips on an update on the Parents' Bill of Rights.
Thank you. Just wanted to give the board an update on where we are with this. May 1st, just about 3 weeks ago at 6 p.m., we had our last meeting. We had 2 in-person groups and 2 Zoom groups. The 4 topics we discussed were: 1, create a family engagement policy using an evidence-based model. The next one was discussing the Parent Bill of Rights policy. That was a draft policy. The third one was define a parent's recourse of action when they feel uncomfortable with school material. And 4, define what a controversial topic is. There was, between the 4 groups, there was about 30, just under 30 participants. So in a nutshell, there were many suggestions on how to clean up some of our policies and how to clarify some of the intent and the ultimate goals of the policies. Since policy is not something that the community nor the superintendent draft or approve, that's a board function and duty. I suggest that I would give the notes and the comments of the groups to Mr. Lindenberger, and he shares them with the board policy committee. The committee then can meet, look over the feedback from the 4 groups, take all that in consideration, and then either recommend or not recommend a policy change to the full board. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. No need to vote on that tonight. Just an update. Thank you, Dr. Phillips.
Thank you.
Okay, board action items. Next up, we have first student contract approval with Heather Bixby.
So in your packet is the negotiated contract for student for the next 5 years. They are the company that won the RFP that we did earlier this year to replace STA. The all parties have reviewed the language, legal counsel has reviewed the language, and now we're just looking for board approval. There's a topic on the agenda later for the intergovernmental agreement with the city. A portion of that has been added to this. So if you were to not approve the IGA with the city, we would probably need to make an adjustment to this as well. But provided they are both approved, then